Tell me about Betsy Johnson.
Betsy Johnson. Betsy Johnson came, she was a Lee. She married Nathan Johnson's father. And Nathan Johnson loved his mama beyond knowledge. I mean, he loved his mama like I love my mama, or did. Nathan Johnson was his daddy was a pretty wealthy man. The Johnsons was pretty wealthy. Not by today's standard, but by that standard, they were real wealthy. And every one of his boys become somebody. They become doctors and lawyers, and Nathan become a merchant. Nathan owned Johnson Cotton Company in Dunn. He owned stores, he owned the cotton gin, he owned mostly all of Dunn at one time. And in 1958, him and his wife had been to Greensboro, I believe, and I think they were on the way back, and they got in a wreck, and both of them got killed. And the reason I remember this is that Nathan was one of my grandfather's best friends. In fact, every year the farmers would go to him and sign a note to get their fertilizer and all that, their seeds and everything to farm. And Nathan was a cruel businessman. If you signed a note for him that you were going to pay him in the fall, you better pay him that fall. You better not mess around with him. Now, he'd take everything you had. Mm-hmm. In fact, I've had my father-in-law tell stories about when he worked for him back in the 50s, that they would go out to a farmer's house and take everything that was there. If there was chickens running around, they gathered chickens there. They took everything. Because when he signed that note, mm-hmm. everything you own was in that note. But anyhow, Nathan got killed. And but before he got killed, he built a hospital in Dunn for his employees. That's how it started out. It ended up to be the main hospital of Harnett County. Nathan named that hospital after his mother, Betsy Johnson, because she was such a great woman to him. She was descendants off the Lees. The Lees, it covers up more territory in the eastern North Carolina than you can imagine. Come off from two brothers, Peter and can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but they came out of Virginia. And those two boys, I said brothers, it was a man and his nephew. It was Peter and his nephew. And those two, they wouldn't believe their descendants today. There is tens of thousands mm-hmm. that's descendants of them. But Nathan was a good man. I remember when I was a boy, we went up there one spring of the year and my granddaddy told Nathan, said, I'm going to need about $600 to get my crop started this year. And the lady that was like his secretary, he turned around to her and he said, give Bill Henry $600. And she said, I don't have a note ready. He said, give Bill Henry a $600. He'll be back this fall to pay it off. And we walked out, and Papa had $600 in his pocket. And later on, I found out that I reckon that's why Papa loved him so good, because he trusted his word. He knew that he'd pay him. And he never made him sign a note. All those years that he bought stuff, he never made him sign a note. And I've heard more tales about people that signed notes that couldn't pay. Now, if you couldn't pay him, you went up there and told him, said, look, my crops didn't do good this year. I can't pay you but $200 out of the $600 maybe. Story goes that he'd say, that's fine. We'll catch you next fall. Mm-hmm. And he'd let them go on. But if a man didn't show up,
if you avoid him, you're going to get the wrath.
The wrath was going to come. You went and bought you a new car, but you couldn't pay him. Mm-mm. If you went and bought you a new tractor and you couldn't pay him. Mm-mm. If you went and bought you another mule and you couldn't pay him, that wasn't the way it went. You paid him first. And what you couldn't pay him, you let him know it, and everything was fine. But Nathan had a bad reputation about what he would do, but he also had a good reputation of what he would not do. He wouldn't take everything you had if he knew you were trying.
That's right.
But if you won't try,